Today, I'm speaking with Coralie Delpha, a lead technical architect at Shopify. I've known Coralie for a while now. She's a really lovely, calm, and curious person, and just very well regarded in her community. So I was interested to catch up and dive deeper into her work, the Shopify ecosystem, and much more. We spoke about her journey in law, learning to code, business school, building community, connection, her team, mentors, using AI, her work with Cursor, the IDE, writing, and advice for younger developers, and so much more. If you're interested in diving into more of what makes Coralie tick and her work after the podcast, you can check out her newsletter. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Coralie Delpha. So Coralie, we've been connected obviously for a while, not in touch for quite a few years now, but it's been really interesting watching your journey a little bit from afar over the last 4 years. We connected, and we can get into that right in the early days of my work at Glide, and you were sort of looking at no code. But clearly now you're hitting a stride professionally, and particularly in your community. Like, the response when I put out that I was speaking to you was like really, really great. That was really cool. But I want to start by saying, like, you didn't study computer science, right? And yet you're now lead technical architect at Shopify. So obviously I want to know more about that journey. So I guess we could start by asking, I know you studied law and business and things like that, but I guess looking back at like the early days, your childhood even, did you have a technical interest in things, like how things work? Did you do anything with computers back then? In other words, can you like trace anything from your childhood to what you do now, basically?
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for having me. We've been chatting for a few years now, and I've been listening to your podcast as well, so it's a pleasure to be here. Can I trace my current job to my childhood? Not really. I would say like just the fact that I have always been very curious. So that's the only thing I would trace. But otherwise, no. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cook, because my aunt was a cook, and I just thought it was so cool. Then when I went to high school, at the end of high school, I was hesitating between going to business school or going to law school. I ended up doing both. I started with law school for 4 years. The reason why I went to law school is because I was watching way too many thrillers, and I really didn't enjoy like that side of criminal law. Like that was my favorite topic, so that's why I went to law school. I never really saw myself as a lawyer, but I really did want to study law. So yeah, I did 4 years.
What did you see yourself as back then, if anything? Like, if you didn't see yourself as a lawyer, where did you imagine that law might have taken you?
Honestly, no idea. I didn't really have
That's
a plan.
good. Like, I think it's really good that you're sort of interested in an early topic and not trying to like go anywhere with it. I think that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
What was it about law that you loved? Presumably you loved the study of it as well. You just decided not to do it later. Yeah. What was it about that? Because I love speaking with lawyers, and just learning a well, yeah, I mean, I haven't spoken to many, if I'm honest, but like lots of friends, a number of friends over the years, I've really enjoyed conversations with them, and they have a particular kind of mind. From my perspective anyway. I'm just interested in how you thought about that learning process.
Yeah, I think there was two sides, kind of the side that we see on TV of like, how is a sentence like decide? How come this person is going to take like 15 years and this one only 5? I was always super interested by that. And then you have all the history side of like, this is how we punish people today. How were we punishing them before? Like, I remember we had a topic in law school, which was only the history of like, how you would deal with new kinds of offenses as well. Like, how come in the criminal book in France we have this offense? When did it start? It was super interesting to know about that. It's like it's a bit like hacking in tech, where you have a certain amount of things that are forbidden, and then you discover a new one because someone is just very inventive, so you add it in the list of forbidden things. So law is a bit like that. So for me, I always thought it was super interesting. But for some reason, not the job itself. I didn't see myself defending someone in court. The first rule of like anyone should be defended. Sometimes I had a bit of a problem with that in some cases. I remember we had like really tough cases, and the teacher would say, if this is too difficult for you guys, you can just come out of the room for a minute and then come back. And there's a lot of cases we did come out of the room because it was too hard. So I just think it's so fascinating law, even still today, even though I don't work in that field. I like reading about cases, not necessarily criminal law now. I don't know. I was more interested in it when I was younger. Now I read about all kinds of stuff. And I don't know, it sounds from far away, it sounds like a very logical field. Like you're going to just apply this rule and it's going to work like that. But it never is the case. There's a lot of psychology in it, which I found super interesting. So yeah, I guess that's why I went that path at the
Say a
beginning.
little bit more about the psychology. That sounds interesting.
Well, if you do something, there's like a hundred different ways we could defend you. And this way is going to depend on the lawyer that you have. They're going to see something they think they should insist on. They're going to talk about your past, about your childhood, or the way you see life, or I don't know. There's so many things you can bring on. And sometimes the reason why your sentence is reduced has to do with psychology, basically. Like you often have a psychiatrist or a psychologist in the room at the trial giving their opinion about the person. And that usually weighs a lot on the people who have to decide. So, yeah, a trial is
It's like
something like super
squishier.
interesting.
I think lots of professions are like this, particularly like government and law and stuff like that. From the outside, it looks like this very established, like almost like just it's bidden, like the thing that it's sort of constructed like mountains or like big architecture, but actually it's like kind of flimsy or it's like water under your fingers sometimes when you're inside it. Maybe
Yeah,
like the web as well. Like, you know, people think the web is like made by one group of people sometimes if they're very ignorant, and it's actually just all just completely evolving. I loved what you said there about like the rules and the laws things, and just that edge, like new things coming in all the time. Like, you know, I have a friend who's in IP, intellectual property, and like we were talking at the very early stages of like all of the AI boom, and it was just like,
yeah,
I mean, she loves it, so she was really interested in that area, and that's why she adores it. It's not like the problem is an issue for her. The problem is the work. But for me, I was like, how do you even navigate that? Like IP with all of the AI gen stuff. So it's kind of crazy.
yeah. I think that's a great example of a topic that was completely put upside down with AI, for sure.
Do you have any friends who are still in law now?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
And so are they involved in any of that sort of stuff? Like, is the tech world sort of touching what they do, or are they in kind of different areas?
No, not really. I have friends in criminal law and friends in M&A, so like company law. Yeah, no one's doing IP around me, but I imagine it must have been a huge change.
So you did law, and then you did business, and
Yes.
that was always an idea from a long time before you even started law that you wanted to do that. So just give us a bit of a perspective on like why those two are interesting. You said a bit about law, but why business? And like, were you thinking about that when you were a kid?
Kind of. I always was super interested in entrepreneurship in all forms. And so in high school, but also in law school, I kept like listening to podcasts or watching interviews of entrepreneurs, French ones or international ones. And I always thought one day I'm just going to create something and it's going to be an adventure. It's going to be really cool. And I thought that business school was the path to entrepreneurship, which it is in a way, but you can also do without. So yeah, that was what I had in mind when joining business school. And I remember I wanted to do a master in entrepreneurship. Like I had this one in mind. I ended up doing something else, but also related to entrepreneurship. But yeah, that was the main topic for
And
a
that
long
was straight
time.
after law, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
straight after.
So you
You
did
have
4 years of study and then like another year of business, right?
I did 2 years and a half of
Okay.
business.
It's a long study period, right? Like
Yes.
I just did I did a tiny little arts degree and then went straight out and had some bad jobs and then progressed that way. So it's very
So yeah.
different. And like I have friends who are medics as well. It's like it always blows my mind being in studies for such a long time, but it makes
No,
total
it's true. That was a bit
um
long. I could have done business school like right after high school, but you
sure.
also have like we call them in French like bridges. So like after 4 years of law school, you can take a bridge and arrive in business school after a few years. Like I arrived straight for the master, and I did my master in business school in a form that we call apprenticeship. So I was doing like 3 weeks in a company and 1 week at school. So I didn't see the business school that much. It was only part of the time. But it was really nice. And this way also the company pays for your school, which is good because like it was 15,000 euros per year. So that's money I didn't have. So I was happy to do the apprenticeship. And yeah, I learned a lot.
And what was the company again? Sorry.
It's a public company. It's called La Caisse des Dépôts. It's basically an institution in France that does a lot of investment and subventions as well. So like if you hear the Prime Minister in France on TV say that France is going to invest like, I don't know, 15 million in entrepreneurship for young people, then it means that behind the scenes, they're going to give the 15 million to the Caisse des Dépôts, and they're going to handle to which project they give the money and how many slices and stuff. So yeah, I was doing that. We had, I think it was an 18 million envelope that we were handling, and it was only given to project around entrepreneurship and also learning how to code. That was the topic. So yeah, I put a foot in entrepreneurship and code a bit during that time, which was nice.
Was that the inception of your? Because my next question is kind of going to be like, when did kind of tech like come onto your horizon? Was that in there at the early stages of you thinking about? Was that included in business, or were you thinking like, no, I'm gonna, I like cooking, I'm gonna do a restaurant? Like, was tech there in the early days or not?
No, I gave up cooking in high school, I would say. When Law arrived, yeah, I did.
You don't cook now as does that feature as like a nice thing that you do on the weekends, or is it just like functional?
Yeah, it's just like to unwind, and I still enjoy it, but I don't see it as a career for now. But yeah, no, tech is a good question. For sure, when I was in the apprenticeship, because we were financing like project around that, it came to my mind for sure. But I think the tech side really started when I opened my blog. Around like reviews on movies and TV shows. That's when I had like my first little tech project. And that's when I discovered HTML, CSS to do some customization. So yeah, that was the opening of the Pandora box for me.
So yeah, let's talk about that moment. Like obviously I've read a little bit about that on your blog and things like that. What was that moment like? And was it just like a slow burn where you're fiddling around with some CSS here and there, and then slowly over the years it became a serious thing? Or was there a moment where you were like, this is cool, this could be a thing?
A bit of both. At first, it was just to change the color of a background or something that I didn't have the hand on in
was
the
this
WordPress dashboard.
Or something else?
Yes, it was WordPress. Yeah. So it started very small, but then I noticed that I was doing those edits very late at night. Like suddenly, it's been 3 hours that I was editing CSS. So I was like, oh, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, I remember those days with WordPress. Our routes would have been very different. You would have actually been effective, and I would have just futzed around for hours and never got anywhere.
I don't know.
I remember when Webflow came along, and I was like, "This is just amazing! Like, why was this not here before?" People like me, it's perfect.
It's amazing, Webflow.
So yeah, just dig into the WordPress like customization side of things. Like, how far did you take that before your blog stopped, or yeah? Actually, there's the second question. So one, how much did you play around with WordPress? And the second one is like, did you stop doing the movie blog? Because obviously you have the Coralie Edit now, which has been around for a while, which is great. But like, yeah, when did that stop?
It stopped in 2020. I had the blog for 7 years. It started really simple. It's just that I used to watch a lot of movies, especially when I was in law school. We had a lot of free time. I was going to the movies a lot with my friends. And I noticed that like a few months later, when my family or my friends were asking me, should I go see this movie? Do you recommend it? I really didn't remember them. I was like, yes, I liked it, but I can't say which scene. I don't even remember the names of the actors. Like, it was terrible. I was like, I spent literally like hundreds of hours watching movies, and it's like, it just goes out of my head so easily. So I started taking notes on my phone. And I remember I was choosing a grade for the movie. So I would say, okay, this one was a 16 out of 20. And here's what I like. Here's what I didn't like. Here is what the director had done just before the movie that could explain some scenes and stuff. It started being like really long notes, but that was just for me. And one day at Christmas, I was with my cousin who lives in Lyon. And she told me, those notes, they're great. Just put them online. Like, stop doing your thing in your phone. I want to read them. You should share. So that's when I opened the blog. I don't think that the CSS customization went quite far, honestly. It was just like I did what I wanted to do on the blog, and then quickly I started to create like just pages just to test some stuff, like just to test some animations and stuff like that. And then when I was in business school, I didn't have a gap year because I was doing the apprenticeship track, but all my friends did have a gap year. So one of them, Thibaut, who I'm still friends with today, he told me during my gap year, I did this coding bootcamp and it was amazing. And I've seen you spend hours in CSS and stuff. You should do that. You're going to love it. And so
This is Ruby, right? Or Ruby on Rails?
yes, it was Ruby on Rails. So I just trusted him, and like I finished business school at the end of December 2018, and like a few days later, January 2019, I started the bootcamp. That's how it went.
So you didn't like get into the whole like interest of the WordPress ecosystem with all of the plugins, right?
No,
Because
I
I'm just
only
like
had
seeing a
plugins
little
with me.
parallel there with like where you're at now with the apps and the ecosystem in Shopify. No, okay, cool.
No, I think it still made it easy for me to understand the App Store when I arrived on Shopify. I was like, oh yeah, this is just like WordPress, but I didn't really push that for the blog. Like I had a plugin for the reviews, of course, and one for performance, I think, WP Rocket, if I remember well, and maybe other two, but that's all. Like it was very
So
simple.
it's just
needs.
like pure content and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love what you said about like that principle that I find personally as well is like, you know, I absorb, I experience, I talk, I do so much stuff. And it's rare that things that I just do and experience that kind of float past me actually like land. I have to process it. I have to like put it in a thing. I have to do a podcast with someone, like things like that, things that I'm super interested in. I will write a ton about, and then it kind of goes in, you know? Do you feel like your blog now is like really, is that a primary purpose of your blog now in some ways? Like to actually process the work, I forget the 3 sections of your blog. What are they again?
Work, inspire, and explore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps me process for sure. I think before anything else, I'm writing for myself. It can sound a bit selfish, but it's really the case. The newsletter is different than the blog because I always knew that I was going to share it. It was a public project, like from day one.
Yeah.
But it's still, I'm still writing for me. Like I'm super happy going back. Like I've created it almost 2 years ago, and sometimes I go back to previous editions. I was like, oh yeah, I was doing that at the time, because I not only share news about Shopify, I share stuff that I do, that I like, that inspire me. And so, yeah, it's a good way for me to process things, because when I write, I'm going to remember it really well. And it also forces me to put my thoughts in order.
And also see how far you've come as well, right? Do you ever have this kind of sense of looking back and being like, oh my God, I've done a lot. Like I've progressed a lot.
Yeah, we used to have thoughts like that with my freelancer friends. Sometimes at dinner, I would say like the situation we have now, like client-wise, money-wise, just where we are right now, like the ability to go live in Spain for like 3 months if we want to, all of that. But like, yeah, we were dreaming of that a few years ago, and it's amazing that we've made it even without realizing it. I try to take a step back. Usually it's not me who's going to do that. It's more like if I see friends or family, they're going to say, oh yeah, I remember that you were saying you would like to do that 2 years ago. And then it forces me to say, okay, yes, that's true. Because for me, I only look like towards what's after, you know?
Right. So it's not like a humility thing. It's more like you're always looking ahead to what's next.
Yeah. I don't know. I go from project to project, at work and personal life as well. And yeah, I try to not go too fast, to enjoy like each part of the journey. But yeah, I rarely look back and think that's actually cool. It's more like, oh, this is going to be so cool. And yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's just like recap. There's law, business, movies, blog, and then Ruby course. What happens right after that? Like you've got a year or two of like freelancing, and then we head towards Shopify. Is that roughly the timeline, or?
You have 5 years of freelancing.
5 years of freelancing. Okay, so that's been like a really big thing in your life. And you mentioned, about your colleagues and your friends who freelance. That was a big period. Talk about freelancing and entrepreneurship, and like that was obviously like a period. And now you're like inside of a company with a full-time paid job. Like
yes.
That's obviously been a big shift. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that period and like the goals and the aspirations and the enjoyment that you had of freelancing, and then like how that is different now, how that sits for you.
Well, when I was first interested in entrepreneurship, I was always looking at people who were like creating a product or a service, but like building a team around it. And I always thought I would create a company and recruit a lot of people. And I don't know, that was the dream kind of thing. And then when I was in the coding bootcamp, I started not like reducing my ambitions, but more like shifting to another model. I was like, I think freelancing would be really, really cool. At no point did I think that I would like take a full-time job as a developer or something like that. Like for me, I would apply the coding skills to freelancing. I don't remember how the idea came initially, but that was pretty clear in my mind. Like as soon as I would finish the coding bootcamp, I would just start freelancing. So that's what I did. And I started at the very beginning by taking WordPress projects and Ruby projects because those were the two tech stack that I knew. And then I think I did like 2 projects, not even 3. And then the third one was like someone contacted me to create a Shopify store for them. So this is when I opened the second Pandora box, which was really cool. And so yeah, I basically got hooked with the product. I just thought it was the best thing ever. So after that project, I just wrote everywhere that I was a freelance Shopify developer, hoping to attract only this type of work. So that's what I've done for 5 years. It was only Shopify. I didn't take anything else. And I think freelancing...
Straight into Shopify. It wasn't like freelancing with other things. It's been Shopify 5 years, and now it's been Shopify inside Shopify.
Yeah. It's I've only done that. Even when I was playing with Glide like 3 years ago, it was just on the side, like during weekends, just to see what was possible. And I thought it was a cool tool, but for work, I was only doing Shopify projects.
Okay. Yeah, I want to dive into Shopify and why it felt so right to you as well. But before that, let's just stay with the learning to code kind of thing. So you could perhaps talk a little bit about that bootcamp, but like I'm more interested in like how your first year was when you were like, okay, let's take this seriously. Like what was that learning journey for you? And you can obviously mention the tech stack that evolved from there, but like I'm particularly interested in like the actual process of learning. The art of learning is something that's always fascinated me. Like how did you find it? I've struggled to learn actual traditional development always. It sort of hasn't interfaced with my brain enough. I haven't done enough work with it really because it's not my top of my priority list. But I've always been like deeply fascinated in the craft of like thinking and logical thinking and abstraction and all of those things. So yeah, I'd love you to just dive into that and try and remember what it was like learning in the first year or so.
Yeah, well, it's very easy. It felt like I was on a bike for the first time and someone pushed me up a hill. Like that's the best way I can describe it, because the first project I had was someone who contacted me. It was a man. He contacted me and he said, my wife wants to create a store to sell the cream, like the hair cream that she's making at home. And so he said, we want something simple. Like we don't have any design or anything. We just want a store set up. And we want you to come to our house to do it like for us in front of us, because we want to understand how it works. We just don't want the website to be like delivered at the end with like the keys. And I had never touched Shopify before. Like I heard about it because of dropshipping and stuff. But I had never done it. So what I've done is I said yes. So we met on a Saturday or something like that. And like the weekend before that, I created a test store. So my first test store, to like look confident when I go to their house in a few days. So yeah, I installed the theme. I tried like customizing, I did products and stuff. And when I felt confident enough, I was like, okay, let's go. I went to their house. I was a bit worried also because this is a strange request a bit. And then I arrived and I just built a store for them. And every time they had a question that I didn't know, I was like, oh yeah, let me just click. Let me just find the answer for you right now. And it went fine. They were super happy. It was a great first project. But I think what I really liked about Shopify, like there's so many things. First, like just something really clicked in my brain, like I can try to explain and say, oh, it's because of this, because of that, but it was a very natural thing. And I think it's just because it's not fully code and it's not also fully no code. Like you can start in a few minutes, and then if you want like more customizations, you have free range to do it. And I think at the time I had in mind that it was only like for smaller merchants, which is how the company started. But like today, when you see that like huge brands are launching on it, you can see like really the how wide the platform is. And at the time, it was just for me. I saw that as a playground. I was like, this is so fun.
I've read you said like sandbox, I think, before somewhere about why it's so good, and that's a really interesting topic we can get into. Chris Spaggs from JetBoost, who is like a tool and a suite of tools for Webflow, is coming on, I think, next week, and I'm going to ask him about that as well. It's like when you write software for larger ecosystems, I think there's a really interesting space to be in as a developer, the pros and cons and just the difference, rather than doing everything from scratch. So just going to the technical side for And again, like we have different people, we have developers and other people listening. What were you doing in the early days, in the first year or two? What was the kind of more technical side of Shopify other than just clicking and finding the menu for the people? Like what side of the customization, like when did you really like dig into the kind of the real code side of stuff?
Quite quickly, because my first project was the only one where I didn't need to go in the code. Like I maybe wrote a few lines of CSS, but that was all. But then the next one and the next one and the next one, it was always like creating custom sections, custom pages, custom logics. And so very quickly I had to go in the code. And at the time, there was not a lot of content around how to create with Shopify. Like I came from the WordPress ecosystem, and on WordPress, I feel like there's a blog article on anything. Like I could ask how to do this mini change. You'd have like 10 videos, 10 articles, and like people willing to help you on forums and stuff. But for Shopify, this was lacking. So I just found like one coding channel at the time of a guy called Jan Frey, who I'm friends with now. His YouTube channel is called Coding with Jan. And so that's how the first technical stuff about Shopify unlocked in my brain. I was watching his tutorials and of course also looking at the documentation, but I learned better in the video format personally. So that was a huge help. And so the first year was a lot of experimenting. I think in the first year, 70% of what was asked to me, I was saying yes, but I didn't know how to do it. Like easy 70%. And so I was just figuring it out. And because the deadlines were not too tight, I had time also to figure it out and deliver on time. So
that sounds like an ideal learning environment, just like learning, just in time learning with not too much pressure, with something that you're passionate about. Just like
cool. It's the deadline got tighter with time. Like in the last 2 years of freelancing, there was less time for experimenting and also less time to just test the new features that were released. It felt more like a race. But at the very beginning,
it was like both the Shopify like platform velocity and also just because of the industry. Like, were there any factors? Right. Okay. Did you all of your freelance colleagues? Do they feel the same thing?
Yeah, for sure. We have at Shopify we have editions twice a year, which is like the company doing a sum up of 100+ updates that they released on the platform. And so you have the aspect of keeping up with that. And you have also the aspect that I think e-commerce merchants are getting more and more technical, or at least the ones you work with when you start raising your prices as a freelancer. You don't have the clients just beginning and just wanting a store setup. You get the more experimented one who know exactly what they want and what they want to set up, and in that case can become complex really fast. And that's also where it's super interesting. But yeah, it's a different rhythm.
So let's use this moment just before we dive deeper into Shopify and your experience with it, like just to catch someone up, like hello me, on like the Shopify ecosystem. Obviously before this interview I've done my basic research, but I'd love you to just like from your perspective, like what is Shopify today? Like I guess we could tackle it from a platform point of view, and maybe you can like hark back to the early days, because like I guess when you started it was primarily theming, right? But now there's this whole realm of apps and other stuff as well, and it's obviously going to much bigger places. So what's the platform side, and then maybe we can get into the kind of the ecosystem side, like the merchants, the freelancers, and the other players involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly, it's like the most interesting company for me, like in the whole world.
You're
I can sound a bit extreme. I'm not biased at all, no.
Yeah.
But it's like when you look at the journey, like Shopify is a 20-year-old company. We celebrated the 20 years last year.
That is crazy, isn't it? I guess that's a sign that like one of us, well, we're getting old, I guess. I don't want to speak for you.
I'm getting old for sure. But yeah, we often don't know it because in Europe it didn't start 20 years ago, but the company is 20 years old. And first, like initially, what happened is that the founder, Toby Lutke, just wanted to create a shop to sell snowboards. And he ended up being like a seasonal business that didn't really take off and stuff. And he noticed that around him, people were mostly interested in the tool that he built to build the store, actually, and not really the store itself. So that's where he focused. And I remember in an interview, he was saying that at the very beginning, no one was believing in Shopify because they were saying, like investors and stuff, they were saying that the market was too small. There was not enough people who wanted to create a company. So like, why create a tool to just help them launch an online store? It didn't really make sense. But turned out, like history showed that many people would have. It's just that it was too complicated. So the fact that the company made it simpler for people to create an online store, it just opened, freed a lot of people. And so that was the beginning. So at first, it was more of a tool for kind of like mom and pops businesses or SMBs. That's the merchants that we have in mind when we first think of Shopify. But then the platform grew so much that now, like yesterday, I was posting on LinkedIn that Lady Gaga launched her store on Shopify. But you have like also like many big brands that are on it, like huge brands making billions. Like Gymshark, for example, is huge. Like Fashion Nova is huge. There's so many of them, and so it's crazy to see that in only 20 years, you go from a small company addressing like small businesses to like a tool that can do anything. And so, of course, the ecosystem around that grew like in the same exponential way. So like you have an ecosystem around, of course, like the themes, because when you start a Shopify store, you have to install a theme like to get you started. So it's basically what we call a template in WordPress. That's the equivalent. You already have your page pre-built and you just have to add your content. And so you have theme partners, so creating the themes for the theme store. I lost count now. At some point, there were like 120 themes, but I think now it's more like several hundreds. So that's an interesting business. And then you have also the app ecosystem, because of course, like Shopify does a lot of things and more, but we can't do everything. So when you create your store, it's very likely that you're going to have apps on top of it. So for example, if you want to display an Instagram feed on your homepage, you're going to need an app for that. For shipping also, you're going to need an app to like print your shipping labels and stuff. So the app ecosystem is huge. Same, last time I checked, there was more than 10,000 apps. So it's around that, I think, these
You're an
days.
app developer, right?
I did, yeah.
Well, we can dive into that later as well. I'll make sure we do. But yeah, okay.
I did, yeah.
So themes, apps.
Themes, apps. And then, of course, you have like the agencies and the freelancer helping merchants build their stores. When you're a big merchant, like, it's funny because I post about it all the time and now I'm having trouble talking about brown. The last one I shared was Bonne Maman. I don't know if you know it. It's the jars.
Rings a bell.
Just of like fruit stuff and like breakfast stuff in France, like a famous one.
Oh, yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like brands like that don't usually have a tech team. So they're going to like go with an agency who knows Shopify very well and it's going to guide them through the process. So we have a lot of agencies and freelancers. That's an ecosystem. And then on top of that, you also get like people who specialize in integrations. So they're going to be specialized in the integration between Shopify and another external tool. It could be an ERP or something like that. So yeah,
so integration is different to an app, right? You can't just like install an app that creates an integration.
You can, but we have what we call like public apps, so the apps that are on the App Store, and you also have the custom apps, so an app that is only going to apply to one merchant and to do one specific things. Some people only do custom apps, some people only do public ones. It's so wide and it moves so fast that even when you're specialized in one topic, it's already a very large one. Like even when you say I'm specialized in public apps, this is huge. Like you could do anything with a public app.
So what does Shopify do to like support the actual app development side of stuff? Presumably they provide, I don't know what the terms are for it, but like a huge amount of resources, whether it's, I'm going to use the wrong terms, like API or SDK or all these things that like help people build and develop.
Yeah.
Like presumably that started off quite thin and now it's like developed a lot. Maybe you could give us just a perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have so many things that are handed to app developers. You have, first of all, the documentation, which is top notch. You have app boilerplates. So if you want to start an app with Ruby or Remix or PHP, we have templates for all of that. You have also the community side of things. We have developer advocates working day and night to help app developers on their projects. I'm thinking especially of developer advocate called Liam Griffin. He's based in Ireland and he's just the most helpful people I've seen. He's always on Twitter answering questions and making sure that people are well equipped to build apps and other projects around Shopify. So we have that. And also you have all the sides of like helping app developers have the best UX possible. So we have UX guidelines. We also have a library of React components called Polaris. So today when you create your app, it's kind of like playing Lego in a way. Like you take
Right. So that's
this
not just
component.
like a design system. That's actually like a library of like components that you can use.
Yeah, it's both. You get the design system and the components that go with it. It's amazing.
And then like how much does Shopify like rein that in terms of stylization? Can people go like really wild in the way that they like develop things, or is there kind of rules? Does it have to pass through approvals?
There's rules. Like you can have what we call an embedded app, which is the app is going to stay in your Shopify admin. You're never going to go out on another platform. You're going to stay in. So in that case, usually the apps are using Polaris so that it doesn't look odd, so that you have the exact same button that you would have in the rest of your admin. And you also have the non-embedded apps who, like, they do a bit more what they want in terms of styling and stuff. But yeah, in both cases, you have guidelines. You have the app submission process where you have a lot of constraints and rules to follow. And then your app is regularly checked. You get like installed. I can see like in my dashboard as an app developer, I had like bots like from Shopify installing my app, checking that everything is okay. Like you have to do that. You can't just leave the door open for anyone to just push updates like that. So yeah, it's also more and more clear. Like I checked the app checklist last week, and it's like so much better than when I've done my app like 3 or 4 years ago. Like it's really great.
Yeah, it seems like Shopify just seems like a great all-around company from the outside, obviously, and the little that I've done. That just everything from like what you speak about, the brand, the video side of stuff, which obviously I think about a lot, and to the community as well. It feels like there's a great sense of leadership around all of this to create a kind of cohesive system. And like the community is like really surprising to me, just seeing from the outside. It's not usual that you see that kind of level of like support, camaraderie, and just like positivity as well. Clearly with like people such as yourself and also the interaction around it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like when you first came in the early days, you mentioned there wasn't like a lot of creators out there. There's maybe like a video there, like a creator there, but presumably it's exploded quite a lot recently. There's a lot of people. Yeah, I guess it's like, tell us a little bit about where the community stands today, and like maybe if you have any theories on like why it's been so successful.
Yeah, it's funny because I received a few messages from other platforms asking me, we want to do the same. We want to have the same level of engagement in our community. How do we do that? How did Shopify do? And the first time I received this email, I was like, it's true, because this is the only community I knew. This is the only tool I knew. So for me, this was kind of normal. But when you look around, you realize that it's one of a kind. I think there's many reasons to that, honestly. I was listening to an interview of Toby last week, so the co-founder of Shopify, and he was saying that at the end of the day, a good product is a product where the people who build it just gave a shit about it. And I think like Shopify, like top execs and even just like every employee just really cares about the product. And so sometimes like on Twitter, you're going to tweet something and you're going to get an answer from the president himself or Toby himself or like a top exec. And this is very rare. And that participates in the feeling of, wow, they're really listening. And so because they are listening, then we're going to post more. Like we're going to share our feedback more. And you get a lot of people just posting Loom videos on Twitter saying, oh, I noticed this bug, or I noticed this, and I think it should be fixed this way. So like, yeah, it's just a good circle. And you also have I remember I was talking with someone one day and they were saying, yeah, the community is just nice because there's enough work for everyone. I was like, I see what you mean. Like if the work was more scarce, people would be a bit more tense. But I think it's more than that. It's just like people just seem more passionate than in other communities. And I see many, many people for who Shopify really changed their lives. It's like, oh, I didn't know how to code. I learned to code just to like play with Shopify. And now I'm living from this country, making this money. Like it's been life-changing for so many people. And it's not life-changing in a way where people are just going to share their numbers and say, yeah, I'm a millionaire now and I'm better than you. It's really very positive. And you get also something where someone comes in the community and says, I just started. They get help like instantly. Like you see
such a good impression, isn't it? Like and that seed in an early impression, like we see it at Glide a lot. It's like we have it's not obviously nowhere near the size of Shopify Shopify right now, but the seeds of a great community are all there, like that have been for the last 5 years. And the people are so often surprised when they come in. It's like kind of like, it's almost like people go like, oh, I kind of have this issue kind of, and the kind of subtext for them is like, I'm not going to get a response. And then someone like just dives in and goes like, here's a breakdown, here's a loom, here are these resources. And they're like, whoa. And like, you cannot buy that as a company, can you? Like you cannot buy that onboarding feature. You can't work on it. Like, I mean, you can very indirectly, but it's very authentic.
Yeah. And I think it's just even like that's the ideas that come to my mind, but there's maybe more to it. Like, I think one of the things that I like about this ecosystem is the fact that even though it's software, it's still very concrete. Like, you see the consequences like straight away. And for example, when I created this very first store, like 2 weeks later, you see the sales coming in. You see like the margin that the merchant is making, the fact that they're going to be able to reinvest that money to maybe launch this second project that they had in mind, and all of that. And so every people in the industry, even like the app developers, where it can seem a bit far away from the business in a way sometimes for some apps, you see how many merchants you're using, where they're based. You're helping like merchants all around the world, like just in a few clicks. It's, yeah, I think we all feel very useful in a way.
You see the impact like in analytics basically, or like measurements. That's interesting.
Yeah, measurements. And they also reach out to their clients to ask like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there any feature that you need? Like, we all feel very useful, and I think that helps a lot. I think everyone at Shopify, like every employee, feels super useful. They feel like they're bringing their part to something bigger that is helping a lot of people. I think it's very noble, like for a cause. Like, you're helping people create their own business, and there's also an idea of like fighting the giants. At some point, I don't know if we say it this much these days, but when I started, Shopify was saying a lot that they want to arm the rebels. And so ideally, each person would have their own store where they sell their things. I think it's just a beautiful cause, and we're all happy to take part and help for that.
Who are the giants in, I mean, not necessarily naming any names, but like in your perspective, like what do you mean by that?
The giants is more like platforms where you come to buy the product just because like you need it. It's more of a practical thing. You don't really have any attachment for the brand like behind it. You don't even know who built it or where it was made. You don't care. You just need it and you buy it, and you want it the next day, you know? But with Shopify, there's a lot of I feel close to this brand because I follow them there. I like the idea that the founder had, the vision. I like the care that they put in their products. Like, for me, all the brands that I buy from, like 90% they're Shopify stores.
Wow.
Often I share when I make a purchase on a Shopify store, I share it on LinkedIn. Like, for example, for this mic, like you recommended that I get this one when I asked you for recommendations. I could have gone to any platform or like any supermarkets. I went on a Shopify store for it, like a London one, and I ordered it. And it's just, I don't know. It's a vision of the world, but I like it. I buy it.
Yeah. And so how do you find, for people who are listening who are like, I want to do that. I want to like support smaller makers. Like, how is there a kind of ecosystem there for purchasers or for buyers? Like, can you actively be like, oh, I want to find a Shopify store or like a more independent store that does this?
Yeah, more and more. So there's two things. There's the first thing, when you're biased like me, you recognize Shopify stores like straight away. But there's also the second part where if you're not used to it, we have an app called Shop. Shop used to be an app where you could follow your delivery. That was it. But now there's a shopping part in that. And so every product that you see on the Shop app is from a Shopify store. So this is a great app that I think is just at its beginning right now. I think Shop in 5 years is going to be like amazing. And you also have the fact that we push for more collaboration between brands. So like with features like Shopify collabs, where you can like sell products from other brands as well on your store and stuff like that. We try to push and help merchants just be together more closely, or even just, I remember I went to a Shopify event in Paris like 2 years ago. I think it was Paris Retail Week, if I remember correctly. And Shopify had a booth there, like a giant one, and all the products that you would see on the booth were Shopify merchants. Like this type of things, I really enjoy. I really like.
A side thing, just a little tangent about Shop and Stripe and payments and the other sort of thing that like, so was that an acquisition of Shopify, that they made, or is it like a product that kind of they built and then?
That's a good question. I remember it had another name at first, which I don't remember. I don't think it was an acquisition, honestly. I'm not sure. I'll have to check.
There are other things like that, because when I said like give us an overview of Shopify, you didn't mention Shop, and then like that's another thing there. Are there other things in the background that are kind of within the Shopify like platform?
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
is
absolutely.
payments in there, or is Stripe, like where does Stripe play in here? Or just give me a perspective on that.
Yeah. The reason why I don't mention Shop a lot is because I'm French. It's in France. It's not like, how do you say, developed yet. It's not translated. It's only in English, and it's not just used a lot.
Interesting. Okay.
I use it a bit more now since I moved to the UK, but still very new. So I'm not used to it yet.
And sorry, I'm giving you two tangents here. What's the goal with Shop then, long term for Shopify? Like, I'm a little confused about where that sits. You mentioned that that's a way that you can like browse different people. Like, what's the view from your knowledge in 5 years' time for Shop? Like, there seems to be like a conflict in my mind about Shopify and Shop. Or how's that going to pan out?
I think that's just another sales channel. Like, you can push your products to Shop, market them there. There's also ads now on Shop, so you can push your products to merchants who shop on it. In 5 years, I don't know. I don't know what's the plan. You should talk to the director of product on that. But I think it's going to become like bigger and bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a marketplace and payments.
It's a marketplace for Shopify products. Yeah, Shopify merchants.
And is payments handled by Shopify, or do you use like Stripe or something like
that? No, you pay through Shopify. The payment question is an interesting one because Shopify has so many products, and so at the very first, I think it was like either Stripe or PayPal. But now you have like other payment platform that created a module for Shopify, so you can pay with like Klarna.
I see. Okay, fine.
Whatever. And now you also have Shopify payments. So we have our own payment module. We basically have our own everything. Like, for example, before, like when I was creating stores, if I needed automations, I would use Zapier, or I would use Make or Integromat at the time. And I was happy with that. But then we launched Shopify Flow. So we have a native Shopify type of Zapier, which worked really well.
I'm uncovering all these things which you didn't mention in the platform overview. You didn't do a good job.
Yeah, I know. It's just...
There's too much to like get the landscape. But this is great. This is really interesting. So this kind of is a nice segue into like my kind of next area of questioning, because like Glide's done a similar thing recently with workflows. It seems like a lot of platforms are doing this now, like just trying to become like full stack or whatever you want to call it. So what's my question here? Like, I guess you could start by saying like, your interest in no code, and does that parallel with your interest in Shopify? Like, do you see Shopify in any way relating to no code? Like, is it just like another, like, is it simple to say that like Glide is something that's for like internal operational tools, whereas Shopify is much more for like front-facing business to B2C sort of web-based stuff? Like, would you see them as similar or parallel in any way, or are they very different?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't say it's a no-code tool, like, because I think it would be reducing because it's so much more. But like, there's definitely a no-code side of it, and the part that is really no-code about Shopify is what we call the theme customizer. So once you install a theme, you have the ability to customize it like without coding. So you just basically like drag and drop the sections, change your text, images, videos, whatever. So this is no code. It looks like a lot of other editors. And the idea is that even though Shopify is used by many big brands and stuff, we're still addressing the people who are not technical and who just want a store. So tomorrow you can take like 2 hours of your time and launch your store without touching a line of code. So this is a no-code aspect. But then because the company was created by tech people and the tech ecosystem, whether it's apps or themes, is super present, we often talk about the APIs and all the abilities that you have to customize it. So this part makes a lot of noise, but the heart of the tool is still something that you can use without coding, which I think is great.
So I'm interested in the operational back-end side of stuff for Shopify merchants. Like, obviously you go to Shopify because you want a front-facing store, and then you start thinking about like, oh, there's automations, or there's this and that, and I want to like integrate with this. Like, how much of a business can be run on Shopify other than just like inventory management and all of this side of things. I can't even come up with the right question because I don't know about this area enough. Like where we see people building like a suite of internal tools for a company, for HR, for finance and things like that, and Glide. Is there any way that Shopify is touching that, or is it primarily like sort of product focused?
It does everything you need to do for your e-commerce. Like if you want to do HR, like accounting and stuff, this is going to be like tools plugged to your Shopify. But it's crazy the amount of things that you can do like on Shopify. So
what's the craziest or weirdest things that you've seen people do on Shopify?
It's more
more use case wise, not like weird stuff. I mean, like what's the coolest stuff?
It's more about how far you can go. Like, for example, if tomorrow you want to, I don't know, let's say you start selling plants, because I have a plant right there. So you create your online store, you sell plants, okay? You start small, you choose to only deliver in the UK for now. So that's what you do. So you buy your theme, you customize it, you choose your domain name, you add your product, your collection, summer plants and winter plants, and then you push it online. That's live, you share it to your friends, you start receiving payment, orders, and everything. You ship them. And then what's crazy is the next steps. It's like if you want to open, you want to start delivering to America, to Australia, to Africa, whatever. In just a few clicks, you're going to open what we call markets, and you're going to start selling in those markets. So it's like you click on activate for your market and you add your shipping rates, and then of course like taxes and stuff, but this is like super easy on Shopify, and then you're done. And like translation, of course. And this is more about when my mind is blown away is always regarding expansion. Like, so then when all of your markets are open, then you're going to maybe think of having a physical store. And we help also with that. We have a tool called POS, point of sale. You can have your
the
physical
thing you
store.
forgot to mention.
I know, it's sub products. Like I tried one day to open a Figma file and put all of the products, and then like it was huge. It's an octopus. So we handle the physical side, the online side. Then you also have like marketing automations, for example. Klaviyo is super well integrated with Shopify, so they can listen to every trigger that we have, order refund, order created, whatever, and then you trigger your marketing flows on top of that. You can have, with all the apps, like for example, we have integration that helps you like sell on other platforms like very easily. It's like endless possibilities, honestly. And then when you have different teams also, you have a user roles section where you can create different roles for people. So you're going to have your accountant only accessing this part, your marketing people only accessing this part. And very often you have 50 people working on the store, and everyone knows where to go, which tools to use. It's just super straightforward, even though it does everything.
Fascinating. So maybe we could talk a little bit about your role now, technical architect. Was that the first role that you had when you came in? Yeah. Okay, cool. So what does that look like day to day? Like, what is the work of a technical architect, and are there many others? Is it that you're a technical architect in a particular area, and what do you do in that particular area?
Yes, it's a great question. It's a role I didn't know before the recruiter reached out. I had no idea that even this team existed or this role existed. I thought that, of course, I had in mind if I joined a company one day, it would be Shopify. Okay, this was in my mind. I'm not going to lie. But I don't know. I thought it would be working on one specific products, like working on, checkout, discounts, shipping, whatever. And then the recruiter reached out and talked to me about a growth services team. And so the growth services team is basically a team that is within the professional services team. So growth services, the goal is to help merchants who are already on the platform and help them grow. So we do that through 4 expertise. The first one that we launched was site speed. So we're basically auditing Shopify stores and making recommendations on how they should fix their store for it to be faster. And then we would also implement those recommendations because our site speed experts are super technical. And then we added SEO and we added CRO, so conversion rate optimization. And we finally added web development, which is a bit more wide. And that's the part I sit in. So for me, for web dev, 50% of my time is consulting with merchants. like answering any questions that they have on Shopify, basically.
How did they come to you? Is that like only enterprise, or like does support like field stuff to you? Like how does that, what's the sort of range that you get?
We have a bit of everything. So of course, like we're not going to get very small merchants, because for small needs, they usually go to a freelancer, and like medium needs, they're going to go to an agency. But for us, we have all kinds of merchants, honestly. Like even just like geographically, they come from everywhere. And it can be a merchant who already has an agency, but they just like need other things, or the agency is busy on this topic and they want help with something else. Or it's like they don't have an agency and they just need punctual help with something, like building a custom feature, or just, asking for advice. It's all types of merchants. I started doing like statistics recently. I'm not done yet. I don't know which type we're working with the most, but I've seen a lot of different things so far.
You must love that, right? Like, because it's you used to do freelance, you love people clearly, and then you would imagine on paper that going into a technical architect role means that you go into a dungeon and then don't speak to them well, and it's the opposite, right? Or like
it
very
is.
Not that.
It is the opposite. Yeah.
Okay.
So like 50% of my job is consulting, but the other 50 is actual development. So actually building features for merchant and implementation. But yeah, we're one of the most merchant-facing teams at Shopify. Like I literally talk to merchant every day. There's no one day where I don't have a call with a merchant. And so the process is very similar to what I had as a freelancer, meaning they contact us. I hop on a discovery call with them to learn more about what they need. If they're stuck on something, sometimes they call us for one thing, but then you discover in the call that they also need help with this and this. Then we send them a quote because it's a paid service. And then they pay, and then we start working, basically. So that's exactly the same process.
How does that quote work, if you don't mind me interrupting? Like, who decides the price on that?
We have an hourly rate of $250 US. And so it's, it's time-based, basically. We estimate that this is going to take 10 hours, so it's going to be 2,500.
Okay.
That's how we work, yeah. So
tell me about your team then. Oh, sorry, were you done with it? There was a thread I might have interrupted then. Sorry.
No, that was just like, I was just saying this is exactly what I had as a freelancer, except the projects are like much bigger, and I now have a team with me. Like I used to be more alone as a freelancer.
So tell me about your team. Like, how many are you? Who are they? Like, what are their roles? What's it like working with them? Like, I'm interested in the dynamic there.
Yeah, so the team, I think when I joined, we were like 7, something like that. And today it's 16. So like the growth has been huge. So we have the site speed part. So that's Mateusz and Estela, if I can say their names. So yeah, they're super, super experienced. I learn from them like every day. It's amazing to see, like, for example, every time I work with a merchant, even if it's only consulting, I'm still going to check with them. Is the performance good? Maybe I can talk to them about that. It sounds like we have 4 sub-teams, but that's not the case. Just 4 expertise, but we talk together like every day. So you have the performance experts, then you have the CRO experts, Fabian and Paige. This is also super interesting. I could do like the 4, like not that I have the skills for them, but I just think that the 4 expertise are super interesting. Like CRO is so large, it's so great. Like you often see posts on LinkedIn where people say, like on the left, you have like the bad design, it's not going to convert well. And then on the right, you have the very good one that's much better. But it's like in practice, CRO is much more complex. Like it's a lot of data analysis. It's for me, it's great to see them in action and see their recommendation. I learn a lot. And then you have the SEO side. So it's our expert, Diana. She's based in the US, and she's going to get help very soon because she's super busy. Like she's full with client work at the moment. I think SEO is a topic that I didn't really see as a freelancer because my merchants always had like an SEO agency or an SEO freelancer. That was never my topic. Like sometimes I had to do some edits in the theme code, but it was quite rare. So I never really dived into that. And so now it's great to see like her recommendation, especially in migration projects. So like we have a lot of merchants coming from Salesforce or Magento to Shopify. And so she prepares like a checklist of stuff we need to do for them.
From Salesforce?
Yeah, more and more.
Just linger on that a little bit. Like what are they doing when they come from Salesforce? Just like, I'm a bit ignorant about this area. Like Salesforce not a shop front? Like, or what is Salesforce doing for them that you then move to Shopify?
So Salesforce is like huge suite of tools, but they have one called Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So to launch your e-commerce. And so
Right.
they're the ones that come to
So they actually
Shopify.
I just don't know enough about the huge Salesforce platform beyond like the basic obvious stuff. So they actually have like front-facing digital stores and websites that you can build.
Yeah. With Commerce Cloud, you can have your online store
Right.
launch with it.
What's the quality of that like? I mean, like, is it good or is it kind of like not so great?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm biased, but also when I talk with merchants, they have already made their choice. They're already moving, and they just need our help on how. So I never really like questions the reason why. But then that's why I read about case studies. Like we publish a lot of case studies on the Shopify website, and so a lot of the time it has to do with what we call TCO, total cost of ownership. So they kind of like, especially in our economy these days, like they're like, our Salesforce Commerce Cloud store is costing this. With Shopify, it would cost way less. And we would also have this and this, like that we struggle to have with Salesforce. And so they make the move. So when they're coming from Salesforce, it's usually like bigger merchants. So it's interesting. It's interesting because it's merchants where most people would think that Shopify would be like too small for them or they wouldn't work, but it does. And in that case, we help with the
That's great to
migration.
hear. So, and then like what part of their businesses remain in the kind of Salesforce ecosystem, and how does Shopify kind of like tend to talk to that?
I think they keep Salesforce as a CRM because that part, like you can have basic CRM in Shopify, like basically with added fields on your customer, you can have a very detailed customer model. But for the CRM part, usually they keep that part on Salesforce. And maybe for other things, honestly, I don't know Salesforce that well. Even Commerce Cloud, like I've never had to work with a merchant who was on it. I don't know. There's also a part of it's often like before we started recording, we talked about the current project that I was working on, and this part was a lot about operations. Like it was a portfolio of brands who wanted to unify their tech stack between their brands. Sometimes it's that. It's just the storefront is not necessarily going to change a lot, except for the checkout. Like our checkout is amazing, but like maybe the customer won't see the difference while browsing the website. But then for the teams, it's way simpler. Like behind it to change, you will need developers way less, and there's an operational efficiency side that we often forget, but we do need to keep in mind.
Yeah. So do you interface or interact with any other major departments in like in Shopify? Like I'm interested in, like you mentioned earlier about like just the scale of Shopify now and that coming on is so huge, like which obviously in the early days as a platform that wouldn't have been possible because of scale, and clearly that's there now. Do you like work with this sort of the people who are like really low level or fundamental of like actually building the tell me about that. I'm interested in how anything that you have to say there. I don't have good questions.
No, like of course I interact like with my team every day. Like the three expertise that I mentioned, and also like under web dev, it's like almost 10 of us. And so this is the people I talk to the most for sure. But because of the nature of our job, we talk to other teams a lot. So like for example, if we see that the last 5 merchants that we have that are big ones have the same requirement that is not met on the platform, like they give the same feedback with the same blocker, then we go to the product team and say, this is what we heard.
Give an example of things you've seen like that.
What did I have recently? We basically have like historically, you would create your store, for example, for France. And then if you wanted to create a UK entity and sell on a UK store, you would need to create a separate store because like it was basically one legal entity with one bank account equals one store. You couldn't have, several bank accounts, several entities in one store. So that was, I wouldn't say a pain point because there was a solution. You could just create another store, but then operationally, you have to do everything twice. It's not necessarily easy for the teams. Like, it's a lot of coordination. And so that's the feedback that we heard a lot. It's annoying to have like 5 or 6 stores. Can we have just one? And so this feedback was heard. And so very soon we will release a feature called multi-entity. And so, which will be doing just that. And I think that's one of the examples because the pain was said with the exact same words every time, you have to listen. And so for us, when we hear something like that, we just go to the product team and see if it's on the roadmap. First, if they know about the problem, they often know already. And is it planned to fix it? If so, how? And we see which information we can get for the merchant. Sometimes the information is private, so we can't share it. But a lot of the time, the team is willing to say this is going to be for Q1, Q2, and that helps. So we do talk to the product teams. We also talk to the MSMs, the merchant success managers. So when you have a Shopify store, like after a certain level of revenue, you have a merchant success manager assigned to you for any questions to help. And so when they notice that a merchant needs our help, they put us in touch. So we're in touch with the MSMs a lot. They're kind of our point of contact with merchants before we take on the project. And we also talk to product teams, MSMs, support teams sometimes. Like I see some support tickets inside and I have a question, I can reach out. This was basically my first surprise when I joined Shopify, is how open the company is. Like I thought I would just be able to talk to my team and maybe the professional services team, which englobes my team, but that would be it. And no, like I have access to anyone, any team, and we can also see what everyone is working on. Like what are the projects that are done at the moment? What's the deadline? Where is the Figma for this new feature? Like I spent my first few weeks, I don't want to say few months because my manager is going to think that I wasn't working, but few weeks for sure, I was just looking inside and see what's in the plans. Because as a freelancer, I had so many things on my wish list and I wanted to see, okay, is this going to be done? Yes.
You got inside the matrix. You can just work out what's going to happen. Yeah,
exactly. There's some transparency and also trust. Like you need to trust your employees to give them
right. And
such
like
a
you've got to
access.
have that internally. Like if you don't have that internally and you're expecting to have that in your community, like you're just mad. So that's really good. Yeah, I feel like that I glide hugely. Like that's one of the things that David has just been so good at from the beginning. It's just being like he's just always said, like, I've worked in big companies before. I had no idea of the financials. I had no idea of this, like, and why this pivot, why this roadmap. It's very transparent. That's very cool. Yeah.
And for us, it's cool as an individual because you get to learn about the platform, yes, but it's our job in the growth services team to be up to date, Like if we want to advise merchants in the best way, we need to know a bit about the roadmap because I'm not going to advise you the same today if I know that this is coming in 3 months. So yeah, this openness really helps.
How many people are at Shopify? Like how many employees now?
10,000 approximately.
And you still have that kind of culture. That's insane. That's really, really good. Because that is the weird thing is like, that's the perennial problem with large companies, or maybe it's not perennial, maybe it's shifting, but things tighten up, like you get silos and all of that stuff. Any insight as to how you mitigate, like how the leadership or like are mitigating that or like encouraging that intercommunication stuff? Like, or is it just like simply not creating rules and barriers? Like, I don't know, like, do you have any insight there?
I think it must be something really hard for like the top of the company to navigate, like wanting to have a big openness and big simplicity. And also you need to have rules and processes because we're big. But I would say like on a day-to-day basis, I don't feel like I'm working at a 10,000 people company, honestly. Like I talk to maybe like 100 people, maybe total, like for my interactions, day-to-day work and stuff. And it's a lot of small teams, like mine is only 16, maybe in 1 year it'll be double, but still, it's still manageable. So the only day that I saw really how many we were was last year at what we call Shopify Summit for the 20 years. We were all gathered in Toronto for a week and we had workshops and stuff, and we had what we call hack days. For 3 days, we just do a giant hackathon. I think it was like the best hackathon, like the biggest hackathon in the world, I think, for like number of participants. And we were in this room, which is not even a room. It looks like a plane hangar. Yes, it's crazy. And so when Toby went on stage, I'm sure he probably had like many other realization of that before, but it's like you realize that all of these people are working on the products that you created 20 years ago, and they're all so happy to be here and like so motivated. It must have been, I would have cried if it was.
What was the vibe in the room?
Kind of electric, because I think it was maybe not the first time, but like the first time in a few years, especially with COVID, that a lot of people were gathered at the same time. Like we do meet with our team, like each team meets like 3 or 4 times a year. So you're used to seeing your colleagues, but like the whole company, like so many people I used to talk to on Twitter before joining or on Slack or in calls and stuff, you see them and they're coming from all around the world. Like we all crossed the planets just for that event. It was beautiful to see. It was great ambience.
There's just employees, right? Or did you have
Yes.
community as well?
So it was just employees, and then one day was dedicated to the community. It was an event called editions.dev. So it's to announce what I was talking about earlier, the editions, so the new updates. And then there was like a little party and just make the partners feel special. I went to that day, even though I'm not a partner anymore, I managed to sneak in, thanks to Liam Griffin, who I was mentioning earlier. That was a great day. I think it's great for partners also to feel like they're a part of the company, in a sense, It could have been 100% employees, but it was not. And we're doing another one in May in Toronto, again, in the same place, and it's still going to be the same layout. Yeah, it's great.
The place. That's where we went as well. Like, seems like a
really?
good fun place to go. Yeah.
Something happening there for sure.
So I want to just stay on the technical side a bit and talk about, your stack. I always feel like a bit of a tech bro saying that word. Like maybe there's another, like your skill set, maybe. I'm not sure. But yeah, like day to day, what and how are you building? And then I'd love to maybe lead into a calm conversation about like whether AI is featuring in any way in Shopify for the developers, for the build time stuff. And your thoughts on that. And like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the question about the tech stack a lot because people hear a lot of things. They hear React, they hear Liquid, they hear Ruby. They're not even not 100% sure what's happening. But it's just because we have so many moving parts inside Shopify. So
give us a sense of that, yeah.
So in my job, like often the merchant wants customization on their theme. So in that case, the theme is it's in Liquid. So it's a templating language. It's basically like HTML with variable injected in it. So if you've done Ruby before and like Rails, it's super easy. So you get that like as a primary, and then you have like CSS, of course, and JavaScript on top of that. So that's like the theme stack. Then you have also some stores that are built in what we call the headless way. So it's like you're going to build your front end with whichever technology you want, and then you're going to plug it to Shopify through our APIs. So in that case, the front can be in React. We have a stack called Hydrogen, which is a React framework that we created to make it easy for e-commerce stores. So you could be playing with React in Shopify. And then if you want to do apps, then as I've said before, it's like any tech stack. Like I have a friend, Matt, his app is in PHP because he knows PHP. You can also do it in Rails, Remix, whatever. So it's kind of, if you're a developer, no matter the technology, you can apply it to Shopify. That's how I feel like sometimes.
On the app side of things, for non-developers, why and how can you develop using anything and then plug that in to Shopify? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few ways. So I know someone in Brighton. He's called James. He's creating Shopify apps with Bubble. So one of the main no-code tools. He's the only one I know who's doing that. So I don't know if it's tricky or not, but he loves it.
What comes out of Bubble? I should totally know this, obviously, with my job. But like, when you build with the visual language of Bubble, like what is the output of that? Like what are you running there?
I played with Bubble a few years ago. What I had created was just a website, like just a web app.
You can do total. It's not just like web apps; it's other things, right?
No, because you have a database model coming with it, which is kind of nicely presented. And so usually it's a web app that needs APIs extensively. That's why you go to Bubble for. But like I haven't used it in a few years, so maybe it has evolved a lot. But yeah, he built his app with that and seems to be happy. So there's that. And there's also another tool called Gadget, who was created by former Shopify employees. And is to create also apps without, it's not no code, but it's like you're going to, basically the boilerplate of the app is going to be done for you. And then you can code on top of it for the essential features that you need. So it's still code, but it's like, you're going to build his app without, it's not no code, but it's like you're going to build the boilerplate of the app is going to be done for you. And then you can code on top of it for the essential features that you need. So it's still code, but it's like, you're going to build his app without, it's not no code, but it's like Yeah.
Like a really like established framework, but you're still in
Yeah.
an idea,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
no visual side to it.
No, no visual side, except the database is presented in a quite nice way. I I often go on their website to see how they describe themselves, and it changes a bit. It's such a complex platform. Like they do everything. It's like full stack
This
tool.
is owned by Shopify
No, no,
or
no.
totally
This is
separate thing.
former Shopify employees that created their company.
Former. Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, former. So yeah,
Interesting.
you can do apps with Bubble or Gadgets, and I'm guessing there's other tools, but I haven't seen them. Most of the app developers I know, like 90%, they're doing just full code.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just rewind a little bit to your app development days. Like what did you do, and did you sell those? Are they still selling? Like, yeah. And was that a time, just to go back to the entrepreneurship phase again, was that like an idea of yours that you were going to like do that full time and like turn that into a kind of like a passive income based sort of development kind of thing?
Yeah, no, it was just a learning experience for me. I really have a thing where I want to test everything Shopify has built, basically. Like I last year before joining Shopify, I was doing some freelance work for a theme partner company. So I was working on themes for the theme store, which is super different than working on themes for one specific merchant. You have
Company
so
that
clean canvas.
clean canvas. Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're based in the UK, and yeah, it was such a great learning experience just because that's work that I could have never done with a merchant. And so the app is exactly the same. I was like, I don't think a merchant is going to pay me to build a public app, or like you can get that as a freelance work, but it's quite rare. So I thought I want to know what it's like to build a public app, so I'm just going to do it. And at that time, Shopify organized a hackathon specific to app developers in Europe. So with two friends, we created an app. And the idea at the time was an idea that I heard in a podcast. A Shopify merchant called Merci Andy. They do gels, like alcohol gels for the hands. And the founder was saying that he had someone technical in their team build a progress bar in their cart drawer to show like the different steps that you can get a free product after this and free shipping after this. And he was saying that it really pushed up their average order value. So I thought it was interesting. I pitched the idea to my two friends and they were like, okay, let's build that. So that's what we did. It was great. It was great to see how it is behind the scenes, especially at the time. Like it wasn't super developed. The app templates, I think there was one at the time. And yeah, the documentation wasn't as good as today. So it was great to see that. And then one of my friends left to continue freelancing full time because that's the thing. All the time that you put in the app it's a time that you don't charge to clients. Like the app is making a revenue, but it was too small to like really spend a lot of time on it. So after like I think it was 2 years, the first one left, and then I left as well, and now the third one is still managing the app and pushing it. So that's great. And the second app I did it just before joining Shopify, like literally 2 months before. It was just something smaller. I thought they would be interesting for merchants to know the gender of their customer. And I knew that this was something that Klaviyo did, so the email marketing tool. So inside Klaviyo, you would have the gender of the customer. But inside Shopify, you wouldn't have it. And my bet at the time was that Shopify at some point would release a tool that would allow you to customize the front end of your store depending on the customer segment. So like if you're part of the VIP segment, you're going to see a homepage with like only super expensive products or whatever. I don't know. They're going to show you an invite to a showroom or something like that. That was my conviction at the time. And so I thought this info is not in Shopify. Let's create an app that is going to do that. And so I did that with another friend. And it was so fun building it. Like we were meeting every day at Pret in Paris, working on that.
I just have to pause there. I love that. Like Pret in the UK for me is like this like fake French thing that like surely is not in Paris, and you, a French person, are in Pret. That's just funny.
Yeah.
Imagine you're in some niche like alley with like beautiful coffee, but you're in Pret. But you're so sophisticated, Coralie.
I know. I made fun of him. I was like, where do you want to meet? I wanted to go to another place called
May
Station
as well go
F.
to McDonald's, like, you know.
I know. But he just loved it there, and he had a subscription where you get a meal or whatever. I forgot, and he was like, "No, you see, it's quite comfortable." And so we tried,
No,
and
Pret,
it was a
Pret, I'm just teasing you.
Now he converted me basically. There was a floor, like a top level, and so we were there, and it was very quiet, very nice. Yeah, we worked for weeks, I think, or a bit more than a month. I think we spent at Pret, and then I joined Shopify, so I had to stop, and so he's managing the app alone today. But yeah, fun learning experiences.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've never worked like that, sort of like a sprint like that with someone just outside of a normal day job, like full time. That must have been super fun.
Yeah, we always knew that we were gonna make the app, but then for me, between the moment where I knew I had the job and the moment where I started, there was a few months because like I moved to the UK, I needed a visa, all of that, and so I had already stopped all of my freelance projects. So I was kind of a mini sabbatical period, and so yeah, we used it to do that. It was fun.
Nice. So yeah, just returning to the stack side of things, are you or any of your colleagues using AI in what you do, using like IDEs like Cursor or like, or Copilot or anything like that?
Yeah, this is AI is very like pushed at Shopify. Like we encourage every day to like try new tools and really insert them in our workflow. So I tried a few, and the ones that stick are Cursor. Like I use it every day. It's my new best friend. I love it. It's helping a lot. I already had Copilots, but Cursor for me is next level. So yeah, that's the main one I would say. Then I was using ChatGPT every day, like for I don't know, more than a year. But I recently replaced it with Perplexity. I like that we have the sources. I like how the answers are more complete. I find that with Complexity, I have less the need to ask details. I already have like everything in one question, one answer. So yeah, I use it a lot. It's a shortcut on my laptop. So that's the two main ones. And I also use Gemini because I do a lot of merchant calls. And so before I was taking the notes and stuff. And of course, when you take the notes, you're a bit less focused on what they're saying. So I like to have the transcript, but I also like to have the Gemini chat where you can actually ask Gemini questions about the transcript. And so sometimes I remember the merchant said something, but I don't remember what it was exactly. So I asked very vague questions. What was the issue that the merchant had with their POS? And Gemini is great help in that.
Yeah, I mean, we're moving towards a point where we could maybe have that in our life about everything. Like, my partner told me this and I've forgotten what date we're doing the thing. Help me. That's the one I need for sure.
I don't know, because that reminds me of Black Mirror.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly where my brain goes as well. That's like the rewind one, right?
Did you see? Yeah, with the chip, and then they finish their day, they plug the TV, and they just watch Memories of the Day. This was so strange. It's my favorite episode, but yeah, it made me feel so strange.
Have you watched a lot of Black Mirror?
I watch everything. Yeah.
You watched everything? Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the best shows.
I watched a bunch of it, and then I watched one, and then like I felt really weird for like 2 days. It like really obviously hit some point. I can't even remember what it was. And I just stopped, but I need to go back to it because it's kind of like crazy to not have that reference in my head.
Well, that's normal. I think like I was used to watching TV shows whilst I was eating, and then I started Black Mirror and I stopped doing that because it's impossible.
Well, you stopped eating.
I stopped eating once.
I think maybe some episodes could definitely stop you eating for a couple of days.
The first one especially, yeah, it's a big kick.
Right, yeah. So let's dig into Cursor a little bit, because I think what would be interesting to talk about there is your like the way that your development is changing because of that. And for people who are not aware of Cursor and have just used like code gen tools like ChatGPT or Copilot, like talk us through what Cursor is and like how you're using it and why it's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's two things. Before Cursor, I was asking questions to ChatGPT and I had to copy paste for them. I used to say for him, but friends make fun of me, so I try not to. I used to paste for ChatGPT like several snippets, several files of code. And so I would say, okay, this is my main.js file. This is my snippet. How do I do that? And so it was just a bit annoying. And so with Cursor, you just add the files in the context. And so it can browse and understand. And so this is just a big time saver. And then the chat part is really nice. Like sometimes I'm going to highlight a bit of code and I'm going to say, just explain and maybe tell me how I can do better. And because it has the context, like the answers are just way more accurate than ChatGPT. That's what I found. So Yeah, and then the autocomplete is a big time saver as well. I'm starting to type something and they know exactly what I was going to write, and then I just have to enter tab and we're good. Like, I don't know how much time I'm saving, but I feel like it's quite significant. And if it's just even just like for mental charge, I just focus my thinking on more interesting topics. That's how I feel like using it.
Right. Yeah. And so would you say that everyone on your team is using it, or sorry, is everyone on your team using it, or is it vary a lot?
Honestly, I think most of the team is using it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cursor, yeah, it's a big part of our work.
Taking over. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Taking over. Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting when like, I find it so interesting how, like, the base layer principle of, like, large language model is useful. And then there are all these, like, new ways of interacting with it. I guess I could just call it interfaces, right? Like, Perplexity gives you more context or more citations or whatever it is, or it looks or feels different to ChatGPT, which might be, at least initially, although they're changing, like, more vanilla, just like output. And then, like, Cursor as well. I find that really fascinating how that going to change, even though the base sort of layer or the principle of prediction or whatever it is the same. Just sort of staying on the team thing just for one last little bit. Are there any, like, do you have in your mind any mentors, or like people who are not necessarily like official mentors? Like, rarely do people have official mentors, but like people who you consider in or outside of Shopify who have really helped you? Or has it been more just like async from afar, YouTube, sort of people who you've learned from?
Yeah. Inspirations are for sure like all the entrepreneurs that I learn about, especially in interviews. But then for mentors, I don't have one where they know they're my mentor, but like there's some people that I learn so much from. Like my manager, for example, like it sounds basic to say that, but I never had a manager before. It's kind of my first job, Shopify. And so, yeah, I kind of have two managers because like the manager that I had when I joined is not the same as the one I have today. So like my manager, the closest one today, he's worked at Apple for 8 years. He has such an interesting experience. He was in private equity before, and he sees things in a way that I find so interesting. I remember in our first meeting, he asked me how he could help me like grow at Shopify. And for me, I was just focused on my work, like when he said like, what's up? I was like, so I'm working on this project. We're going to deliver tomorrow. And then I'll take on this one. It was very much like present. And then with him, I feel like I'm taking a step back and asking like, okay, where do I want to be at Shopify in like 2 years? Like, for example, am I interested in managing or something else? So I learned a lot from him. And I also learned a lot from from his manager, Michael, who was my manager when I joined. For Michael, it's more like the way he thinks and the way he works. Just like I just think he's so efficient. Like sometimes I'm gonna come in a call with him. I'm gonna say, okay, for this I hesitate between this and that. He's gonna be like, no, this is this because this and this. So like, it's so efficient, and the way he sells our services also in a call, like there's no. For me, like maybe because English is not my first language, but sometimes in my sentences you can cut like 1/3, these words that are not really needed. And for him, every word is so important. So I learned a lot from his style and his management style also. I think, yeah, he's definitely a mentor. I don't know if he's going to be watching it, this interview. If he is, then maybe he's going to be happy. But yeah, definitely an inspiration for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, I felt in the early days, I worked with David a lot. He's very similar for me, like just the ability for certain people to be able to, like I would find I would waffle for a little bit. I would like sort of like talk about a thing, and then he'd be like, "It's this," and he'd be like, "Yeah, you're right." And it was like annoying and deeply inspiring because you're like, "Wow, the ability to be able to just get to the core of the issue was there. It was like out in the ether of what we were thinking about just then, and I had to like think out loud and do all this stuff, and you just went like this." There's
exactly.
a sort of like, I can't find the right word because obviously I waffle, but like there's an exactness to certain people's thinking, which is also quite gentle as well. Like, and that's just like super inspiring to me to be around that.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And there's also, because sometimes like with merchant, there's a psychology part. So for example, recently we had a merchant and I was saying to Michael, like they need this and this and this. It was a lot of requirements. And he made me take a step back and say, okay, what have they done before meeting with us? And I was like, they migrated to Salesforce a few years ago and the migration didn't really go well. They were expecting this timeline, this price, and it wasn't managed well. So the owner is a bit traumatized. He's fearing that the migration to Shopify is also going to be a nightmare. This is not against Salesforce, just the migration itself didn't go well. And so he was like, okay, maybe we should take that into account because it sounds like they just need reassurance. That's why they added all of that in the brief. I'm like, yeah, you're right. They need reassuring. So then you approach things differently in the next call. So
yeah, it's like this theme I've been trying to remind myself again and again over the last year or so is like question the assumption. Like it's so easy to be problem solving for something that is basically an assumption or a problem that is like unconsciously defined, and you're trying to solve that problem. And actually the goal is to actually step back and be like, hang on, is that the problem? And that's what great managers and leaders do.
Yeah. And we used to say that like merchant or customers in general are bad at thinking of a solution, or like that's not even their job. Their job is only to say the problem, but sometimes the problem that they identify is not really the real one. Like if you work in renovation and the customer says, I want my kitchen to be redone, they need the kitchen to be redone. Like there's not a reason behind it of why. You don't have to dig deeper. But for us, when they say they want to redo the product page, it's like, do you really? Or are you just trying to improve the conversion rate because you noticed that this was low? And in that case, we think the focus shouldn't be the product page, but it should be this because and this, you know? So this is super interesting. And about mentoring, I think the important step, the next step is when you're facing a situation and you hear in your head what the mentor would say. And you're like, okay, Michael would do it this way. He would ask this and this, so I'm going to do that. This is where it gets interesting. And I'm at that stage. I told him that one day. He was like, really? I'm in your head? It's not strange? I was like, yeah, it sounds strange, but no, it's game changing.
No, it's any person that you have in your life that you're like you're connected to and you've been around a lot. Like I have that with my parents a lot, you know? I can close my eyes and just like feel the whole feeling of what it would be to discuss a topic with them. And I can kind of like, I wanted to use the word compute, but like compute that conversation like in a few instances, in a few moments, and then be like, okay, just like gut, you know, when that kind of relationship goes to a level where it's just like instinct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How does instinct play out for you at work? Like we were talking about like the AI prediction side of things. Like I'm interested in the, like how, if you have any reflections on your craft of designing software, which can get incredibly complex, like how does the unconscious play a role in what you do? Do you ever find you're surprised by like solutions you come up with, or do you ever find yourself thinking too deliberately about stuff and then like, I don't know, going for a walk, or do you ever dream about code? Like I'm just interested whether there's anything there that comes up.
That's funny. Dream about code itself, no, but like dream about projects, yes. Like it's more the problem that we're trying to resolve with code. This is gonna. I feel like writing the code is the easy part, but the hard part and the part I'm the most interested in.
Yeah, dream about architecture, maybe.
Yeah,
would be a better way of putting it. Yeah,
and solutioning. Yeah, for sure. This is huge, to the point where sometimes you kind of want to switch off, you know, like it's the weekend and you're still thinking of that project because you wonder which solution is going to be the best. And there's something with Shopify, which I think is the same for every like dev project, but it's like when we have a problem presented by a merchant, you have maybe not 100, but you have at least like 10 different ways of solving it. And so it's not just finding a solution, it's finding the best one. And it's not just the best one, it's the best one for this merchant, you know? So like if you have a merchant who you know has a team of people who can edit content, update stuff, then you can find a solution for them where they're going to have maybe meta fields that they're going to fill and stuff like that. They're going to be confident with that. But if the merchant is a solo founder and they say, I have no time to go in the customizer and add stuff, then meta fields maybe are not going to be an option and you're going to want to think about something else. And in that process, I used to be alone as a freelancer, but now I have access to like 16 brains, and it's amazing. It's like we often have like what we call synergist call, where we just discuss our different topics and see if another craft can help us. And this is my favorite type of code. It's like, I have found 2 solutions for this problem. So I present them like, can you think of a better one? And even just after that in the code, this is how I did it. But I feel like it could be optimized. And Cursor is saying that no, but I'm sure we could do better than this. And we just think, and yeah, these are the best part of my job, the solution.
Yeah, that sounds like a really satisfying edge of collaboration. Yeah. What about, I guess related to this is just on this kind of like mentors and careers and feedback sort of realm, like what, if looking back over the last, whatever it is, 8 or 7 years, you could tell me, what have been are there any avenues or periods that you've gone down where you've been like, that was like a bit of a waste of time? Obviously with the wisdom, knowing that like any avenue that you go down that's a dead end is in the end harvest. But like, is there anything that stands out where you're just like, yeah, I got a bit lost here, or I struggled a bit, or I had a hard time, or like burnout or anything like that?
Yeah, waste of time, no, because of what you said. I want to say it's never a waste of time. So far, that's how I view it, but you never know what can happen.
If you were being really hard on yourself or cynical, which you're not, would there be anything that might fall into that category, you know?
A waste of time?
Yeah.
No, but I think when you find something that you really like, you often wish that you started earlier. So I remember one time I was talking with my friends, I was like, instead of going to law school and business school, if I started coding in 2012 after
I got into crypto right when Bitcoin was like invented.
See, but it's like, it just means that you found something that you like. So I don't mind this kind of thought. But then for the burnout part, I didn't burn out, but I think I came like a bit close to it when I was a freelancer. Like I have a tendency to say yes a lot, which is great in some parts, but in some others it's not. It's like when they all have the same deadline and the deadline is next week, you get a moment where you're going to work a lot. And as a freelancer, I had a point definitely where I was taking too many projects. That was around 4 years of freelancing, because then the 5th year I worked for the team partner like full time. So that was a bit easier. But yeah, the 4th year, I was taking too many projects. Some of them, didn't finish at the right date. They were a bit late, so they were overlapping with another one. I was supposed to take vacations between the 2 projects. Vacation got skipped, like all of that. I was working on weekends. You know the sentence that we often say, we often see online, which is, I have some friends, a friend called Simon, he's tweeted that recently. I was like, I don't know if it's the right path. It's when you tweet, oh yeah, I like working on Saturdays or Sundays because it's so quiet. I don't get the emails from the clients. I can just, and I remember I was thinking that at some point, but then no, for me, it was the beginning of the end. Like when you start working on the weekends, all days look the same. You don't know when to rest. I was seeing my friends, I was always exhausted. So there was a point where I just took a big, knife. And I was like, okay, this is cut. This I'm not doing anymore. This I pause. This I give this project to another friend so that they can handle it. And yeah, felt much better afterwards.
Yeah. Seems like a natural progression in most freelance careers. It's just that you're ambitious and then you have to sort of like find that edge, go way over it and come back.
It's a real thing also. I think it's quite scary, but this is human nature. It's like you can read as many articles as you want on burnout. You're still going to hit the wall, It's like you have to do it yourself and feel to learn. That's how I feel. It's interesting, and I think it's good.
Right,
otherwise
I see
no
what
one
you
would
mean.
make
Yeah,
mistakes.
so there's like there's pre-wisdom. There's like you know about emotional intelligence, and then you have to go through a lot of shit, and then maybe you have some. I see. Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, this person did a burnout. Oh yeah, that was the signs, but that's them. For me, yes, I can feel the sign, but I'm different. It's gonna be okay. But no, it's not. You're gonna feel as exhausted as them, and then you learn. So
yeah, I think it's like we don't understand ourselves. I think is another way of putting this. We have to discover ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a lifetime process, obviously. But like, you go through long 7, 5, 10-year periods where that's an experiment of like understanding yourself, and then you're sitting with like who you are now through all of those mistakes with a kind of sense, oh, okay, like I know what this thing is now. But you just can't predict that because it's just not authentic. It has to come out through iteration,
Yeah, absolutely. And otherwise, like no one would make mistakes, Like the first humans would write a blog post on every mistake and then all the others would avoid it.
A blog post before they invented the internet. Yeah.
It's interesting. So I'm going to hit 30 years old, like in a few months, in 4 months, 4 or 5. I don't want to think about it too much. And every people that I'm asking, like who are like 31, 32, 33, they're all saying that the 30s are great because they really feel like they know themselves now. And it's like, of course, it's still going to be a discovery, and in 10 years they will know themselves even better. But it's like, yeah, that's one of the most beautiful things I think about life is constant discovery of who we are really. And I don't think I know everything, you know. I know what I like work-wise, and there's plenty of things that I know, but there's so much more to discover, and I think I'm ready for
What
that.
have you learned about yourself about like the rhythm of each day? I guess another way of asking this is like, what's your day like in terms of like routine or productivity? Like, you know, for example, just personally, I know I'm like best in the morning, and like only in the last few years am I really just about getting a sense that I can't work solidly. I actually have to take breaks. Surprise, surprise. Food, like input, like do you exercise? Be interested to know about that.
Yeah, my routine has been quite the same since I started freelancing, honestly. I feel like I had less of a control on it when I was in school. So in school, it was a bit more messy, also depending on my schedule, and it was rarely the same every year. But now, since freelancing, I'm a morning person for sure. I start work in the morning, and my calendar is always blocked in the morning so that I can focus on merchant work. As a freelancer, I was doing the same. And then the afternoon is more about calls with the teams. And I exercise. Yes, I love sports. My favorite sport is capoeira. I don't know if you know it. It's a Brazilian sport. I used to do that for a few years.
What was it? It's capoeira, did you say?
Capoeira, yeah.
Yeah. I know it. Yeah. I had a friend who was very, very good at that.
Yeah, it's great. And I was used to doing that. There was, I think, 2 or 3 trainings per week, and I kind of got the rhythm even when I stopped. I just signed up to a gym, and so I run. I started running last year. So it doesn't really matter if it's running or anything else, but I do exercise. I used to do that in the morning before work. That used to be how I started my days. But now it's more like breakfast, work, and then the gym is at the end of the day to unwind. Like I wasn't doing that before, but it works for me now. And I try also because Shopify is fully remote company in Europe, at least. We don't have any offices here, so I work fully from home. I try to go like to a co-working space or like to cafes to just change environment, because at some point I'm like, yeah, I need to change scenery to just see something else. So I like to have that in my routine 1 day per week so far. It's also because it's not really practical to have calls in a co-working space or another space. So usually the day where I have no calls, I take it outside. And yeah, that's pretty much it for a routine. It's the big lines. And also I would say, like, because half of my team is in Canada, I have afternoons that are more full than when I was a freelancer. No, like when I was a freelancer after 3 p.m., I wasn't going to do any like groundbreaking work, you know. But here, like 3 p.m. is when the Canada wakes up, so we start working on stuff. That's when I start to have like the coding sessions with colleagues. So this is a bit different, but yeah, it's been working well for me.
So yeah, there were a couple of community questions, which I think we've kind of answered about AI and the way that you develop. And there was one I think that we didn't address, which was about really just advice for Shopify developers or freelancers today. Because as you mentioned, things, you know, you've been in this a long time. You've built up to where you are now. Obviously, you're not freelance anymore. Like, do you have any advice for people getting into this today and just starting out?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a bit different than when I started. I think when I started like 6 years ago, we were all calling ourselves Shopify experts. Like that was the title, and that was also the title on the Shopify partner directory, where you see the list of freelancers and agencies. And I think that was fine at the time, but I think today, like you can't really be a Shopify expert. So like I would say, if you're starting, just choose your battle kind of thing. So like if you want to do theme customization, then focus on that and dive into it like fully. And if you want to do apps, then just same, focus on apps, but also focus maybe on specific type of apps, because there's so many APIs, you can't be a pro in everything. So like if you're starting, choose a topic, spend time learning like in the docs. I know that a lot of the time we only have like a few hours per day to learn about something, but with Shopify, it really makes a difference if you like block a few days, and you're fully focused, because that's when you start making the connections between the different products, understand why they exist and how they should be used in the best way. And also, I would say, like, to start, it would also be great to like talk about what you're doing, basically. So in France, I organize events for Shopify freelancers, like, because I had the habit of reaching out to people who I saw on LinkedIn had the title freelance Shopify developer or something similar. I would say, hi, how are you? I see they were doing kind of the same thing. Would you like to have a call? And all of those people, so I knew them and they were like all around France, but like they didn't know each other. So I just wanted to gather them. And then I kept on doing that because it was so fun. And so sometimes we would like include in those events people who just started like 2 weeks ago. And every time the advice would be the same. It's like, try to connect to the community. So like reach out to other people to get some help and kind of learn from their mistakes so that you can go faster, but also communicate about what you do, because it's super important how merchants are going to view you. Like, for example, for me, when I was an apprentice, my boss, Veronique, at the time, one day we were having lunch and I was talking about the movies that I had seen like the weekend prior to that. And she said, oh yeah, lunch was great. It was super interesting to know that you went to see this and stuff. And that launched the topic also at the table, which was nice. There was a nice ambience. But sometimes you should think about talking about your work at lunch. And I was like, oh, but I thought it was supposed to be the moment where we all unwind and, cut from the morning. And she was like, yeah, that's the theory. But like in practice, sometimes talk about the project that you finished or talk about the ones that is starting next week and you're super excited about, because right now, like, you're doing a great job. Like, I'm very happy about you, but I'm the only one knowing that you do a great job. And she said, that's not the way you progress in the company. Like, she had been there for like 25 years. And that stayed with me. I was like, okay, I'm doing a good job, but she's the only one knowing. That's interesting. And so after that, she sent me like to some events, because she had been there in the company so long. She couldn't be bothered to go like to the same stuff every year. So I went. And like, I did an event at Microsoft where it was a panel about women entrepreneurship. So I thought it was super interesting. And I started taking the habit of like posting about that on LinkedIn and say, yesterday I was at Microsoft. This is what I learned. I thought it was great. Post a little picture. And so when I started freelancing, I still had that habit of posting about stuff. So I said, okay, this was my first project. This is the second one. I'm very happy because we built this and this. And this is what really accelerated my journey in Shopify. Like, this is one of the main things, like, aside from technical skills and whatever you want, like, this communication has really made a difference. And I wouldn't have this job at Shopify if it wasn't for that. Like, when the recruiter reached out, like, she knew all of my LinkedIn profile by heart. She had read my newsletter. She had read everything. Like, and so to freelancers starting, like, just, even if you feel like you have nothing to say, or like if you feel like it's awkward to post on LinkedIn, which it is, like, maybe fight a little bit and do it, because it's going to serve you in the long term, like, way more than you think.
Yeah, and your newsletter is like very much how you do that. It's been great diving into that a little bit over the last few weeks. There was some stuff that you touched on there, which might be a good way to kind of like round up a little bit, which is about principles. I love the way that you spoke about like what inspired you about other people, like the way that they act and interact. And I've always been, although I mean it's on my shelf, but I've never actually read it, the book by the famous investor who's also named, this is useless, but his name's escaped me now, but he's got a book called Principles, and it's all about like the principles that he and his company have used and developed over years. And I feel like all of us have that, right, consciously or unconsciously. Yeah. And I guess, yeah, you're a bit more conscious about this. So I'd love to know, like, if you were to have like if you could mention maybe 3 or 4, I might mention one which is clear about you, which is like people and connection. Like that's so evident in what you do and is so underestimated by people, like perhaps starting out as well. It's like that's at the core of everything. But yeah, are there any others that come to mind?
Yeah, it's funny because you opened the interview on the question of like, why did I go to law school? And this is the type of question that is super interesting to me, because when I'm asked about things that I didn't think through or like didn't think for a second, so I'm like, okay, but why actually? And so I'm answering the question for you, but also for me at the same time. For law school, I don't get the question a lot. So it was, maybe that wasn't my clearest answer in this discussion. But recently in my newsletter, I did this exercise because one of the sections in my newsletter is inspire. And so I talk about someone who inspired me that week or like previous weeks. And after like 60 editions, I was like, okay, let's just, take a step back and see who I've been inspired by and like why. Because every time I'm like, okay, I like the fact that he built this or that she did that, but what's the underlying principle behind that? So I try to sum it up, and I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I think one thing that comes out the most from the people who I'm inspired by is the fact that a lot of the time when they have their idea, a lot of people say, this is shit, you shouldn't do it, or like you're wasting your time, and they go anyway. Like this thing, it doesn't matter the topic, like it can be musicians, artists, whatever. I love that. Like that's why I love watching interviews of artists, because often, like I remember like DJ Snake or whatever, like they all have kind of the same story. No one believed in them, like not even their parents. And so then when they're successful, it's like, then there's also a side of like they're trying to prove people, which is interesting. There's an ego in that, and without the ego, I don't think you can do it. But yeah, when you swim against the tide and like, choose to trust yourself rather than everything you're hearing around you, especially when you don't even have in mind someone who did that. Like you're kind of the first one in your mind. This is even harder. So this I respect. Something related to that is vision. I'm impressed by people who have a very clear vision of where they want to go. It's not a vision in the way of like, I know that I want to do this and this is how it's going to go, It's not a fixed plan. It's just a direction that they see far away, and they're doing everything to achieve that. And so, I have friends around me, or like they've been telling me for the past years that they want to achieve this, and I just see them working in the right path for that, like they're making the right steps. I think that's great. I wouldn't say I have a vision. Like I have maybe a direction, which is like follow what I like, follow my curiosity, and just trust my gut. But like I don't know where I want to be exactly in 10 years, and I think that it's impressive that some people know that already. So I think that shows also that they know themselves really well, and even if the vision changed, that's okay. But just like the fact that they're driven, I really like that. And there's also, of course, the hardworking part. Like every hardworking people I respect, honestly. And it's not even just the time. Like you don't have to work like night and days. It's more the intensity they put in the work and how committed they are. I think that's great. I think it's very easy to start projects. It's less easy to continue and then finish. And I see so many people for who hard work is kind of the norm. They don't even see that they're hardworking. They just work. For them, it's normal, but it's not. It's just, we have a merchant called Typology in France, and the founder, I was listening to an interview from him like a few months ago in a podcast called Generation Do It Yourself about entrepreneurship. And I was so impressed by his journey. And you can feel that he's like super, super hardworking. And it's also then something that you give to your company. Like it's part of the culture. If they see you like being super intense, there's like high chances that employees are going to want to do the same, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So yeah, those three for sure. And then just people doing something different. Like anything to do with creativity, like for example, yesterday, like very silly example, I was on Twitter. I was in the rabbit hole of Twitter at 2 a.m. as usual. And I saw this girl. She's making Pokemons with crochet, like she's crochet knitting Pokemons. And she's posting them on Twitter. And I thought it was so great. Like I know crochet and I know Pokemon, but I never saw the two put together. And just that, like for me, like how do you get the idea? How do you get the stuff? And then you do it, you manage, like they look amazing. And then she posts and she gets so many fans because it's people like me who love Pokemon and they're super enthusiastic. Like, yeah, it's super original ideas. I'm always a big fan of, no matter the domain. And it doesn't even matter if I like it or not. Like in that case, I like it, but sometimes I don't. But I just find it so creative that I still admire the person.
Is entrepreneurship still calling you? Do you think that comes back for you?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But I think that's the case for many people at Shopify. There's an entrepreneurship culture. I see so
Right.
many
Great
former
point.
employees creating their companies. Because sometimes you could have a company who's a bit scared of that, I can feel that this employee is going to leave soon because their heart is really in entrepreneurship and not corporate. But it's like at Shopify, it's fine. And it's even, I don't know, the more entrepreneurship there is in you, the better it is for the company. Like, I think it fuels it in a good way. But yeah, for sure. Like the day I leave Shopify, I don't see myself joining any other company. I just see myself creating something for me. I have no idea where it will be, but yeah, I think that's the path for me. Entrepreneurship is still the main path. But doesn't mean I'm not happy at Shopify. Like this is the best job I could have, and it's super super crazy every day. I love it. But yeah, if I look in the distance a bit, entrepreneurship is definitely calling me, and I'll answer.
Nice. Coralie, this has been epic. Thanks so much for your time. It's been great to connect again. We'll do it again offline soon.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me.